what is the what is either your earliest memory of leadership, of recognizing leadership, or your earliest memory of a leader? It doesn't have to be exactly the first, but an early memory you have of learning about leadership yourself, or perhaps someone you saw and for the first time in your life you realized they were a leader. Uh,
Well, it's probably not the first time, but the one that rings to my mind very quickly is John F. Kennedy. When he was campaigning, there was a sense in this country that we are all just moving forward, and he had this charismatic appeal to everyone. I remember my parents being so excited that they could vote for him, because here was a young man who had a vision and that he could get everyone to come in and really talk about where he wanted to take this country. My mother had his picture in her kitchen until the day she died. But he was a phenomenon. He was someone that so many people could identify with. And for me, that was, I always remember what he said. We all remember it. Ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. It is what we are responsible for. And his words resonate with me continuously by saying, what can I do for the next person?
For me, one of my favorite memories is of my sixth grade teacher, because he was the first teacher that actually tried to engage his students rather than just having us sit there and repeat things by rote. He really was very instrumental at rallying the students to be interested. He was the first teacher that read to us Jane Eyre, and really inspired me to love learning. So he was a leader in education, and Mr. Doré, he was a wonderful, wonderful teacher.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think my first one, as thinking back, was my sister Nancy. I'm one of 6 children, and Nancy is the third. And we called her Calamity Jane because wherever she was, it was a calamity. But people loved her, and she loved them. And I remember her running for office in high school when I was a little one in grade school, and all that excitement around her running for office in high school. She was like the lead in the play, and she was president of the athletic group, GAA, I think we called it at that day. So she just was fun, and people loved her, and I just remember her very much as a leader.
That story rings a bell because I know each year you're part of our program at the Huntington, and I think I remember you sharing about Nancy before in a smaller group. A same big smile though brought to your face.
Yeah. We always called her Calamity Jane because it always seemed that there was a calamity wherever she was.
What let's come forward into right now. Who was the person that you learned your most recent leadership lesson from? or circumstance, just something. Now that we're kind of warming up to the topic, something that's happened recently, or a person that you recently met who struck you as a leader.
Do all of you remember where you were when the shooting happened in Newton, Connecticut, and what it was like, and how you felt about it, and what a horror it was to experience that? And because of television and all the media, it's like we're all there and feeling with the parents and feeling that, we've been traumatized. That Friday night, we were going to have a big service at one of the congregations that I'm a member and I teach with. And I remember saying to the rabbi, what you need to do tonight is tell each one of the children is there that they're loved, that they're cared for, that they're going to be safe. And that you, as you stand up there in front of everybody else, it's your responsibility to calm people down, to get them to feel like they're not alone, to get them to feel like we're all connected, and that we will go past this point and then we will survive. And so we started out the service, and I said, tell everybody to stretch out their arms and hug the person next to them. It was an incredible moment of just being able to touch the person next to you, whether you know them or not, but just to feel that warmth of their hand. And so I think that was the closest challenge I've had in the near term.
Thank you. Star?
I'm taking some classes at USC in educational psychology, and one of the teachers I had, was the superintendent. At the time he wasn't the superintendent. He was the principal at Lakewood High School a number of years ago. And some of you might remember there was a big scandal involving the high school and a bunch of boys kind of keeping score about girls and not appropriate. And it got to the press and it really became a very unfortunate incident. And so the part of the class was talking about what you do during times of crisis as a leader. And he talked about the presence, about taking some kind of action, and not acting like nothing happened or nothing's wrong, or basically ignoring people's feelings, concerns about their children, the quality of education they're getting. And he's an excellent leader. He did go on to become a superintendent, and I think he was at Glendale schools. And he just has a way about him. He's not always the most popular person, but he just knows how to exude confidence and leadership qualities, so people feel confident in his presence, and they trust his expertise on what he's doing. And he's an excellent teacher, and he's really shared a lot with the class and helped us with our leadership challenges.
Excellent. Sister?
Well, last Tuesday night, I had dinner with President and Mrs. Carter, and at St. Genevieve's High School, and they were there. President Carter has been at the high school a couple times, but his wife Rosalind had not been. So the high school put on a beautiful mass, although he's Baptist. He participated in the mass with the young people, and then a lovely dinner. And the leadership style of both Rosalind and the president were incredible. At the end of the mass, the children had been collecting. They had these big water jars, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And they had been putting money in, and so they presented him with a check for $8,500 that they had collected for his foundation. And as you know, his foundation helps people all over the world. And the bishop who said the mass was from South Sudan. And South Sudan is the newest country in the world. And so he spoke to the children about freedom and the importance of freedom. Well, they're working on some guinea worm or something in South Sudan. And so the president said to the children, I am going to use this money to continue our fight with this disease in this country. And it was just a beautiful message to the children. Both President Carter and then his wife at the dinner were beautiful examples of leadership. Again, calm, committed leaders. And you knew that they were totally committed to making the world a better place.
Sister, what was was this the first time you met President Carter in person?
No, this was the second time.
This is your second time having seen him. What is your observation about what the country knew about President Carter and the difference between what you have come to learn about him in person?
I think President Carter is such first of all, he's a profoundly deeply spiritual man. He and Rosalind both, their faith is very, very important to them. I think they are thoroughly, thoroughly good. I think he is brilliant. You know, he was a rocket scientist, actually, nuclear scientist. I think they were probably too good for the sophisticated politics of Washington. And they certainly have done it in their, I don't know if you're aware of their foundation, but if any of you ever have the opportunity to go online and check all the work that they have done. There are 5 major diseases in the world that are not being addressed because they are in the poor countries. So these diseases are not being addressed. President and Mrs. Carter are addressing these diseases in the poorest countries of the world. So he has the status of being president, so can get things done. And as you know, he also works very much with the countries that are working for freedom. Rosalind and President Carter both go in and make sure the voting is done correctly. They're just amazing. They're both in their 80s. They bike ride. They play tennis every day. They walk. So they're in great shape.
It's inspiring.
Very inspiring. Very in their simplicity.
One of the things our students of leadership often learn is that there are different theories of leadership or about leadership. Let's take some time to kind of walk through that. What's based on your studies or your life experience, what is a theory of leadership that you've come to observe, that either you've learned about or that you've constructed on your own? Very often the study of leadership has to do with attribute theory, that there are attributes of leaders. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, I will try. I think one of the things about leadership, and I love what the sister is saying because she says all the things I'd like to have said to you previously. For me, there is a line in the play Hamlet that is critical to leadership, and it says, "Above all else, to thine own self be true." And it is really the thing that I love about leaders that I admire is that whatever they do is something that they truly and completely and wholly believe in. I think leadership requires that you have that personal commitment to it, that it defines who you are as a person. Now, today I may be interested in working with the students here, and maybe 5 years from now there will be another challenge coming through. But those skills of being concerned and interested in the education and valuing that education and wanting to see the students grow and mature and develop is the same kind of skill that I would be looking to do someplace else. And it's the value that I hold dear. That if you don't do that, if you are just going and announcing what you think people want to hear, then I don't think you're a good leader. At least not for me. And that eventually that comes through, that you really have to be committed to a cause that sings to you and speaks about who you are as a person and the values that you hold dear.
So committed, honest, direct. Star?
From a theoretical perspective, one of the frameworks that we learned in school was the 4 frames of leadership by Bowman and Deal. And really that's just a simplistic way of evaluating a situation and knowing what type of action to apply. So the 4 frames are structural, knowing when you walk into a situation, are you looking at processes that you're going to have to deal with, political situations, symbolic situations, and that people put a lot of emphasis in the symbols that are important to them in a situation, or the HR framework. So it's really understanding how people are operating and how to approach them. And again, it just gets down to people skills and taking time to learn what motivates other people, what is of interest to them, what's important to them, so that you know how to approach the situation. And I think it was Peter Drucker who said that being a manager is doing things right, and being a leader is knowing the right things to do. So that's a really eloquent way of pointing out the difference. Managers just will do the work, and a leader will decide strategically what needs to be done. using using that framework of theory, or there's lots of other ones out there, but it's really understanding the situation that you're trying to undertake and how to be the most effective.
Excellent. Sister.
Well, I don't know about theories, but I would say two things, and both, I won't repeat what Rabbi and Star have said, but I agree with a lot that they've said. But I think number one is being grounded. I think you have to be a together person to be a leader, because people will see the flaws if you're not really, really grounded. And in your knowing your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and then complementing those. So if you know your weaknesses, you're going to find someone who's going to help you in that area. I think the thing that I see is vision, having a vision for an organization. And it does, and that, why I said that I love this study of leadership is because working with principals, you can have a principal who's dynamic. They walk into the room and everybody knows them and they know everybody. Then you have someone who's very, very quiet. And yet both can be extremely successful leaders because of vision. They have a vision, and they pull people into that vision and move that vision forward. So I don't know what theory that is, but.
Well, this is just great. We have, and it's interesting, Star, because we're very lucky in Los Angeles at both SC and UCLA. They're really deep schools, social science research about leadership, and I can hear some of it being reflected here. This idea of vision, commitment to thine own self, be true. These are all things regarding attributes. But Star, it was interesting to hear you refer to Bowman and Deal, who have very famous 4 frames of leadership theory. One of the things that can be most frustrating to students who study leadership is that it's ultimately so contingent. That ultimately, when all is said and done, that when any number of things come into play, that there is some number of things about a circumstance that make leadership contingent, the things that you need to apply as a leader. What are your thoughts on this idea, the challenges of leadership when so much of leadership is it depends? It depends on time, it depends on place, it depends on circumstance. What are your thoughts? What are your experiences with this idea? This contingent nature of leadership?
Well, that comes with age. I hate to say that, but as you mature, you've lived through some things and you know how to apply your experience. I mean, when I first was starting out, I didn't have a clue. I mean, I worked in aerospace full time to get through college, and then I got my first job as what they called a marketing editor. I wasn't a supervisor at that point. And at that time, if you were good at something technically, typically it was thought you'd be a great manager. So I became a marketing manager with no training on how to supervise people or things like that. I could get my job done, but I didn't really know too much about people. So it was kind of some hard knocks. And fortunately, the place that I was working, the CEO decided, maybe we do need to provide our supervisors and managers with some training. So that really did help. I would say when you're just starting in your career is try to read as much as you can about different situations, case studies, and observe people, how your supervisor handles things so you know the good things and the bad things, because you can learn a lot from poor supervisors as you can good supervisors. And just observe and listen. That's the best way, I think, to learn. And just the school of hard knocks, you'll learn a lot that way too.
Hear, hear.
I love the word "it depends" because I think there are a couple of things in it. First of all, I think it's very important. Anyone says that it depends, that's a challenge for you to see if you can overcome that obstacle. Okay? So when people say, well, it depends upon what, except for maybe the weather, but if it depends upon if so-and-so will do this or if so-and-so will do that, that's your challenge, to see if you can get so-and-so to do what you need to be doing. And it also is the opportunity of learning, because each person that you come across has the potential of being your greatest teacher. And that is, to me, is a gift, that every person has something that you can learn from, and that you need to, because I believe God puts you in a place where you're going to learn, that you're never going to spend your life in a vacuum, that each person has something that will give you a learning experience that you can take with you. And if the word is independence on this and depends on that, then you can learn from that and then use those learning experiences as tools to solve the problem to get you to the next place.
Thank you. I would say one thing is intuitions. I think a good leader trusts their intuitions. And most of us know intuitively how to move. And I think that's one thing we have to trust. And I know in my career there were 2 times when I didn't trust my intuitions and went with someone else's advice that I regret it to this day. So I think we have good intuition. A good leader has good intuitions you go with. And the second thing is collaboration. Just like you said, we need everybody at the table to make good decisions. In leadership today, you're not standing there alone. Sometimes you are, but a lot of times you use the people with you. As I said, if you have a weakness, someone's out there that can help you with that. Your own weakness, it might be their strength. And I always say the third thing is the secret of my success as a leader has been hire people smarter than yourself and let them do their job. Seriously, don't be threatened by someone who's smarter than you are. Put them on your staff because they'll be a great source of help to you and inspiration.
So this is so good. Part of many leadership theories is this idea of humility, of being humble, which leads you to be more open and be receptive. I know we're still circling around for questions from the audience. So the next question is speaking to this idea of the life of hard knocks, intuition. But intuition, in a way, it's been described in other ways as it relates to leadership. And one of the theories about wisdom put forward by Aristotle was this concept of phronesis, this idea of practical wisdom, that one goes through life, I guess, as you say, as people get older, and that you begin to recognize patterns of problems, and then you gather sort of a pattern, your own patterns of solutions. What kind of practical wisdom have you learned about leadership? What are the patterns that you notice about leadership or leadership challenges that allow you, as you mature as a leader, to know what to do? That intuition that Sister spoke about. What are some of the patterns that you've noticed regarding leadership? What practical wisdom at your stage of your career are you able to apply, perhaps?
I would say the one thing is most people want to do a good job. Most people want to succeed. And sometimes you have to take the time to listen to what they're saying or analyze their behavior for things that are not apparent in their performance or their relationship. I know I used to tell my employees, especially when I worked at a financial institution, when a customer came in and was upset and would be screaming at someone who was working there was more going on than the problem with their account. So I'd say, you need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and try to empathize with the person, because that would usually calm them down. Then offer them some alternatives. And usually they would say, I'm really sorry, this happened today. I didn't mean to take it out. 9 times out of 10. So it's really basically understanding that most people have a good heart and they want to do well, or they want, they're not bad people. There's other things going on sometimes in the situation that you need to take a little bit of time to figure out.
Thank you. Rabbi?
I always think a good sense of humor works a long way, Aside from really listening to your own intuition, and I think that's a real clue, and some of us are much more intuitive than others. And when you meet a person that comes to you, they radiate some kind of a feeling within you. But if you are open and available to that person, it's really wonderful and it's important because then you're going to get the best out of that person. However, you always have to remember to have a good sense of humor. That goes so much further than anything else. Is if you can diffuse the most difficult of moments with a good sense of humor, and you can take the angriest person, if you smile at them, they can't be angry anymore. I mean, try it. If you have a friend that's angry at the moment or distressed and just wants to go at you, and you smile at them, you have stopped that anger. And in that moment, you can get the very best out of them. And to me, that is the critical opportunity of changing the tenor of what's going on. And then, to me, that's, showing the person that they can solve the problem as well as you can.
So, Rabbi, when is it hard to have humor? So when is a situation in terms of leadership and contingent, and it depends, when is it difficult to bring humor into a situation from your experience?
Well, I think humor, when you're in a traumatic situation, it's really very difficult to have humor. But there, for example, when I go out with my police officers and they're always worried about the consequences, and then I'll say to them, watch out, don't get into mischief or something like that. Just to bring back that humanity, just to allow them to feel that you care about them as a person, that helps the first responders, that helps people to feel like you care about them, and then they can do a better job. And I think that's what it's all about. And it is also how you react. If you show fear first, as you pointed out, we're going to lose we're going to lose it. I was at 24th and Figueroa the days that the riots broke out. And I knew instinctively that something awful was going to happen. But if I shared it with everybody and said, this is going to be a terrible moment, then I would have lost it. I would just said, we're going to be challenged. Are you up for the challenge? You have to, I don't know, does that help? It's that we
Yes.
need to show our humanity. And I think if you show that humanity, everyone will respond to you in a warm way and be willing to work with you.
Thank you. Sister?
Yes, and I agree both with Star and with dealing with people. It has to be a win-win, that they win and not that they're going to lose. And I think that's very important in leadership. And then sense of humor is the only thing that can get you through tough situations. I would say three things. And you have to keep studying these and studying these and studying these. And these are conflict management. As a leader, you have to know how to manage conflict because you're going to have it. And as I say, Star already referred to that with conflict because you're dealing with people as a leader. And the second one is stress management. Knowing yourself and knowing when you're under stress and it is going to affect everybody there because they all see you under stress, like stay away from her today, So stress management and conflict management. Then the other thing is time management. I would say those are three of the wisdoms that I've had to learn, how to do those three. And I think if you're teaching leadership, you need to teach leaders time management, conflict management, and stress management.
What's the hardest thing about either teaching or learning those things?
I think with time management, most of us who are leaders we want to get jobs done, we want to do things, but we have families. In my case, I have a religious community, and you can lose perspective. So I think the time management for our leaders today is critical. We were talking at dinner about email, and teachers getting emails from students and leaders getting them from parents. How do you manage all of that and still keep your personal life and and in my case, the prayer life and the things that are important and valuable. So I think you can, conflict, there are certain skills you can learn, the skill sets, and the same with stress. But I think time management today is a critical factor because everybody wants an answer now. I emailed you at 10 o'clock this morning. It's noon and I don't have an answer. Well, I haven't even been to my office. So I think time management is a critical one.
What is it about women in leadership? What is particularly unique to women in leadership, or what is particularly unique to the challenges that women might have in leadership positions?
I didn't say that.
Besides men.
Besides men. Oh, I think, it's changing, but I think that sometimes it is difficult to be female because if you are aggressive at all, then you're viewed as being unfeminine. If you're really smart, then some people might find that challenging. There's a lot of issues there. So I think the word of wisdom there, if you're thinking of going into management, you just have to, be prepared and not let that be daunting to you because, you are a smart person and you have a lot to offer. And some people, they can't deal with that. That's kind of their issue.
I'm from the generation where women weren't necessarily expected to succeed. Okay. Fortunately, that's not the case for young women today. But there is one challenge that I think women overall need to remember, and that's to mentor. That as you move up the ladder and you have learned things, it is your responsibility to bring others along with you. I remember the feminine mystique and the fact that women were not considered to have value in the corporate life. Women didn't know about how to run businesses. Women didn't know how to, draw a satellite or be in the aerospace business. And so we have opened those doors, but they can close very quickly. So it is that you have a responsibility not only to be the best you know how, but to mentor and to bring along the next generation, because those doors can close very quickly.
To bring others along with you. Sister.
I totally agree with that. I really do, Rabbi. I think it's very important that we who are in leadership positions encourage other women and our young women. I think the I think the main thing is always to be professional, no matter what the situation, is to keep that professional role, and then I think there's not a problem. I think if you cross that line, then it can absolutely be. But I think as long as you're professional, you're knowledgeable and competent, I don't think there's issues. I really agree.
I think it also depends on what industry you're working in. In education, I found it to be much more receptive than some of the other industries. I worked in, as I mentioned, aerospace. That was a long time ago, but it was pretty much a man's world at that time. So it was rather challenging. I wasn't in management at that time. I think it's a little different when you become a manager. But things are changing. I think also women are very capable. We have a lot of different skill sets other than men, and it's a good balance if you have a team of men and women working together. Again, it really does depend on the environment and the industry.
The one thing that women have that's infinitely better than men is we have great intuition. Okay, and
Is that right?
And I think that, that gives you the opportunity of being a really incredible leader, is that you're intuitive. You can almost sense who's going to work together and who is not going to work together. You can sense how to put two people sitting across from another that can really form a partnership, And then you can say, oh my God, if I put this one and this one together, it's, like oil and water. And so that skill that women have of being intuitive can be your greatest charm and your greatest skill and your greatest opportunity of really creating a wonderful team that can work together. And it doesn't matter what industry. Before I became a rabbi, I was a headhunter, and let me tell you, it's in the aerospace business, it's very competitive, but those intuitive skills really take you to a long way, and you can learn an awful lot to use those skills to really work for you.
I would ditto that, absolutely. I think that's one of the major gifts we bring to leadership positions in the world, working with men.
Two questions.
The doctor agrees with us.
I'm learning a lot tonight. I will say that. Just two final questions. The first is, very often when students study leadership, they study a fairly modern theory of leadership by a fellow named Howard Gardner, and it's called Leadership as Storytelling. And his theory is the great leaders understand the circumstance they're in, they understand the story that they're in, and are able to tell a convincing or authentic story about what can be. This idea of storytelling. Leadership is storytelling. What kind of, you think of maybe one event or circumstance in your life where you have been part of a story and you've had to make sense of it for others to inspire them? This is something that perhaps you realized much later in life, or a situation you were thrust into, a circumstance that you had to make sense of for others. It could be personal, could be business.
I'm in that situation right now. My job, we're funded in part by the Small Business Administration, so dealing with the government is always a challenge. And what we do is we help small businesses either grow their business if they're already in business, or if they're starting a business, we're there to help them. We provide that at no cost. But when you get money from the government, there are strings attached. And the strings for us is we have to show the outcomes of working with these businesses. So we have these very incredible goals that we have to reach every year. For example, the number of businesses that we help get started, we help them find loans, things like that. And all that has to be documented by the person that comes to the center. We can't just say, we help 100 businesses get started. It has to be documented by the client. So they are very high goals. And it is a very difficult situation for us. So I try to motivate my staff because I know they can do it, and I do believe in them. And so every month we have a meeting and we talk about the things that we're doing to try to reach the goals. We recognize the successes, celebrate the successes. And this last year, we've done better than we ever have done since I've been the director. So I know that the capability's there. It's just a matter of inspiring the staff and keeping them on the same page and letting them see the results and celebrating the successes and telling the story that way, very visually actually, so they can see the progress that we're making and keeping them on track, because it does get discouraging sometimes when you're dealing with 1,000 files and trying to make sure that everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed for the government auditors, and then doing your job on top of that with the clients. So it is a challenge. But we try really hard to keep them engaged.
So bringing people together to remain focused, to celebrate the small wins in a chaotic environment. Mm-hmm. Rabbi?
I see Joe Mark here, so he'll know this story. We, in Hermosa Beach, about 3.5 years ago, formed the PCH Aviation Committee, which is, we have a small portion of PCH and aviation, and we're trying to make it a business zone and much more attractive so that Hermosa is not a drive-through but a destination. And as we formed this committee, we had 2 people in there who literally can't stand each other. And one of those people is an incredible naysayer. And the question always is, what do you do with people like that who can tear down a committee, can tear down a commission that always have the worst intentions. I mean, even if they want to say something nice, it comes out awful. You know? And our committee meetings are televised, and if one of these people doesn't show up, he'll send you an email and say, why did you say this, and why did you do that, and why are we here, and why are we not, why haven't you accomplished anything? And so you take what they say, which to me has been a tremendous challenge to go beyond that and say, well, what is the value in what this person is saying, and how can I turn this around to be a positive experience? We now have a new city manager who is completely committed to the success for these committees and commission, and it is really the patience of taking the naysayers, listening to what they are complaining about, and seeing how you can use that negative energy and turn it around to becoming something positive. It's not easy. And you walk out of the meetings and you go, I just had another set of gray hairs coming through, or, where's the nearest wall I can punch? But, if you get beyond that and you don't lose your sense of humor, but you really take these people and find if there is something positive that you can learn from them, that to me has been the most incredible challenge. But, outlasting the negative can really be very good.
I have not heard that theory of leadership, but I'm going to have to think about that. But I would just briefly say, I think as a school principal, working with a faculty, the stories, you constantly learn from the stories the children told you, the parents told you, the teachers told you, and the whole idea of celebration was so important. Celebrating the good stories, the happy times, the important dates and all. I think that's very important. But
So again, themes of celebration.
themes of celebration.
Remaining positive.
Positive, sense of humor.
Let's close with this question. What did you learn from each other tonight about leadership?
Well, we've heard some really wonderful stories. I think the sense of humor, keeping that in mind. Sometimes it's hard to do that when you're in the thick of battle, But you should try to do that. And just listening to people. And you have such a gentle spirit about you that it's very calming and reassuring. So I think that carries over. And try to carry that into your leadership style. I think people find that very reassuring.
I feel awfully blessed that I'm between these two wonderful women. From Star, I have learned one thing that's very extraordinary, is that you can take the worst model and you can learn from that worst model, and that even if you're personally challenged and and feeling unsafe, you can pull what's ever inside of you to calm the situation down, and that you continuously have that intellectual curiosity to learn and to better yourself, which is important. Sister over here is an incredibly insightful woman, and the fact that she's so organized is, I treasure that. You should never see my desk. And from you, Dr. Brophy, I have learned something else, and that is that you are inquisitive, and you have the challenge and the opportunity and the delightful sense of humor to bring out the best in all of us, and you find the strength in all of us. And I think that's incredible. No wonder the college is doing so well, because you have that great talent.
Thank you. Sister, what did you learn tonight from your colleagues?
Well, I learned, first of all, as I said, it was a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to explore the topic of leadership, and I enjoyed your challenging questions. I think it was an honor to be with Star, with the rabbi here, who is a rabbi, and I, as a religious woman, it was an honor to be with you and to hear you're working in the the situations that are unbelievable, where people need such comfort, and that you're there for them. That is wonderful. And Star, it was fabulous listening to you in the whole different world than the rabbi and I are in, but in yet so many commonalities and the challenges that we're meeting in our different fields. So it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.